The Battle of Cannae, which occurred on the 2nd of August in 216 before the Common Era, was a turning point in the Second Punic War between Rome and Carthage. Fought in the Apulian region of southern Italy, this battle is remembered as one of the greatest tactical feats in military history. Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general, faced a much larger Roman force led by the consuls Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro. The battle ended in a catastrophic defeat for the Romans, with the Carthaginian army employing a brilliant encirclement strategy. Despite Hannibal's overwhelming victory, the long-term effects of the battle were not enough to secure ultimate success for Carthage. The prelude to battle. The Second Punic War began in 218 before the Common Era when Hannibal led his army from Iberia, modern-day Spain, across the Alps to invade Italy. His daring crossing of the Alps in 218 before the Common Era remains one of the most famous military campaigns in history. After his victory at the Battle of Trebia in 218 before the Common Era and the Battle of Lake Trasimene in 217 before the Common Era, Hannibal inflicted heavy losses on the Romans. Rome, however, refused to surrender and regrouped, assembling a massive army to confront Hannibal head-on. By 216 before the Common Era, Rome had raised an army of approximately 86,000 men, intending to destroy Hannibal's forces once and for all. Hannibal's strategy. Hannibal, whose army numbered between 50 and 60,000 soldiers, was acutely aware that he could not defeat the Roman army in a straightforward pitched battle. His strategy relied on superior tactics, deception, and the mobility of his diverse forces, which included cavalry from Numidia, infantry from Gaul, and skilled slingers from the Balearic Islands. Hannibal understood the Roman strategy of massing their heavily armed legions to break through the enemy lines. To counter this, he devised a plan that would lure the Romans into a trap, using their own momentum and confidence against them. The Roman command. The Roman consuls for the year 216 before the Common Era, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, and Gaius Terentius Varro, held joint command of the army. Varro was known for his aggressive temperament, while Paulus was more cautious. The two consuls alternated command each day, and on the day of the battle, Varro was in charge. His overconfidence in the strength of the Roman army led him to ignore Paulus's warnings and engage Hannibal in open battle. The Roman army marched to Cannae, located near the Aufidus River, where Hannibal had deliberately positioned himself to draw the Romans into a vulnerable position. The battle begins. On the morning of the 2nd of August in 216 before the Common Era, the two armies prepared for battle. The Romans, arrayed in their traditional formation, placed their infantry in the center and their cavalry on the flanks. They aimed to use their superior numbers to overwhelm Hannibal's smaller force. Hannibal, anticipating this, deployed his troops in a crescent-shaped formation, with his weaker infantry at the center and his stronger forces, including his elite African infantry, on the flanks. His cavalry, under the command of Maharbal and Hasdrubal, was positioned on the wings. As the battle commenced, the Roman infantry advanced and began pushing back Hannibal's center, which appeared to be retreating. However, this was a deliberate maneuver by Hannibal. As the Romans pressed forward, the crescent formation began to collapse inward, drawing the Roman legions deeper into the Carthaginian lines. Meanwhile, Hannibal's cavalry, superior in skill and mobility, quickly overwhelmed the Roman cavalry on the wings, leaving the Roman infantry without support. The encirclement. With the Roman cavalry defeated, Hannibal's forces launched their decisive move. The Carthaginian cavalry wheeled around and attacked the Roman infantry from the rear. Simultaneously, Hannibal's African infantry, positioned on the flanks, pivoted inward and attacked the Roman forces from the sides. The Romans, now surrounded on all sides, were trapped in a tight formation with no room to maneuver. Hannibal's plan had worked perfectly. The Roman soldiers, packed together in a dense mass, were unable to effectively fight back, and chaos ensued. The encirclement at Cannae is considered one of the most successful examples of the double envelopment tactic in military history. The Romans, despite their numerical superiority, were completely surrounded and unable to escape. Over the course of several hours, Hannibal's troops systematically slaughtered the Roman forces. It is estimated that between 50 and 70,000 Roman soldiers were killed during the battle, while Hannibal's losses were relatively light, with fewer than 6,000 casualties. Aftermath and consequences. The defeat at Cannae sent shockwaves through Rome. The Roman Senate, in disbelief at the scale of the disaster, took extraordinary measures to prevent the city from falling into chaos. Military tribunes were dispatched to gather the remnants of the Roman army, and Rome called upon all available citizens, including slaves, to defend the city. Despite the enormous losses, Rome refused to negotiate with Hannibal or consider surrender. This resilience would ultimately prove crucial in the long-term outcome of the war. Hannibal, for his part, hoped that the defeat at Cannae would lead Rome's allies to defect and that the Roman state would collapse from within. Indeed, some of Rome's allies in southern Italy, such as Capua, did defect to Hannibal's side. However, many of Rome's key allies remained loyal, and the Roman Senate maintained its control over the majority of the Italian peninsula. Hannibal's inability to capitalize on his victory at Cannae marked a turning point in the war. Although he continued to campaign in Italy for several more years, he never again won a battle of such magnitude. Rome's response. In the aftermath of Cannae, the Roman military strategy shifted. Recognizing that they could not match Hannibal in open battle, the Romans adopted a strategy of attrition, avoiding large-scale engagements and instead focusing on cutting off Hannibal's supply lines and isolating him from reinforcements. This strategy, known as the Fabian strategy after the Roman general Quintus Fabius Maximus, gradually wore down Hannibal's forces and prevented him from achieving further decisive victories. The Roman resolve to continue fighting, despite the catastrophic losses at Cannae, ultimately paid off. Over the next decade, the Roman general Publius Cornelius Scipio, later known as Scipio Africanus, would lead a series of successful campaigns against Carthaginian forces in Iberia and North Africa. In 202 before the Common Era, Scipio defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama, bringing an end to the Second Punic War and securing Rome's dominance over the western Mediterranean. Legacy of the Battle of Cannae. The Battle of Cannae has been studied for centuries as a classic example of tactical brilliance. Hannibal's use of the double envelopment maneuver remains a model for military commanders to this day. Figures such as Napoleon Bonaparte and Helmut von Moltke the Elder have praised Hannibal's strategy and sought to emulate it in their own campaigns. Despite its brilliance, Cannae also highlights the limitations of tactical victories when not followed by strategic success. Hannibal's triumph at Cannae was his greatest achievement, but it did not lead to the downfall of Rome. The battle demonstrated Rome's extraordinary resilience and capacity for recovery, even in the face of overwhelming defeat. In the end, Cannae became a symbol of both the heights of military genius and the depths of human tragedy. The Battle of Cannae remains one of the most famous battles in history. Hannibal's tactical mastery, combined with Roman overconfidence and poor leadership, resulted in a staggering loss for the Roman Republic. However, the aftermath of the battle also demonstrated the resilience and determination of the Roman people. Although Hannibal achieved a victory of unprecedented scale, Rome's refusal to surrender and its adoption of new strategies ultimately turned the tide of the war. Cannae thus stands as a reminder of the complex interplay between tactical brilliance and strategic perseverance in the art of warfare.